Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about something pretty fascinating, at least I think it is. It's all about seed collection in tropical forests.
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting.
So I've got this excerpt from a textbook,
Okay.
and it's all about tropical forest seeds. And it's honestly way more interesting than you might think.
Mm,
It's not just like picking up
right.
whatever falls off the trees. There's a real science to it.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's, a lot that goes into making sure that you're getting the right kind of seeds
Oh, absolutely.
and that they're viable.
Yeah. And the book really emphasizes that from the very beginning. Like
Hmm.
the journey from a tiny seed
Yeah.
to, this massive towering tree, that it all hinges on the quality of
Yeah.
that initial seed.
Which makes sense. It's like the foundation. If you don't have a good foundation, the whole thing
It's
crumbles.
like baking a cake.
Exactly.
You can't just magically fix a bad batch of ingredients later on.
That
You need those good quality seeds right from the start.
Absolutely. Seed quality is determined right there when you collect it in the forest.
So where do you even begin?
Well, the ideal scenario really is to find those seeds that have naturally fallen to the forest floor.
Oh, so just like a leisurely stroll through the woods, right?
Yeah, ideally.
Hmm.
But it's not
I'm
always
sure it's not that simple.
not simple. No, imagine you're looking for seeds from a specific tree, maybe one that's known for producing high quality timber.
Okay.
Often those ideal, what they call like mother trees, are the tallest and straightest ones with very few branches.
Oh, so the ones that are going to be the hardest to climb.
Exactly. And that's where the challenge comes in.
Yeah, the textbook definitely mentions that collecting enough seeds from enough trees to ensure genetic diversity that can get pretty expensive and time-consuming.
It's a huge undertaking, and that's actually why there's been a lot of research and development into alternative collection methods.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, some of them are pretty ingenious, others a bit more unconventional.
Okay, now you've got to give me a little teaser here. Unconventional. How?
We'll get to that.
All right, all right.
But first, I think it's important to mention that sometimes you can actually avoid climbing altogether.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for common species, there are already established seed sources,
Okay.
and there's also vegetative propagation.
So that's like growing trees from cuttings, right?
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
So that can be a really effective way to get more trees without having to collect seeds.
So we can just skip the whole seed part in some cases.
Sometimes. But for those rarer species, or when you need a really diverse range of genetic material,
Okay.
there's often no substitute for collecting those seeds directly from the trees.
Even if it means scaling some serious heights.
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that it's all about the potential of that tiny seed.
Yeah.
Technically, I guess collectors are gathering fruits,
Right.
but the real prize is the seed inside.
The seed is what matters in the end. It's that seed's ability to germinate and grow into a healthy tree.
Exactly. And speaking of getting around, those seeds have developed some pretty clever ways to disperse themselves.
Oh, yeah. They've had millions of years to figure it out.
Right. The book talks about wind and animal dispersal being like the two main strategies,
Those are the big ones.
with some trees even relying on water, particularly those growing along rivers.
Makes sense.
I'm picturing like those helicopter seeds,
Yeah.
spiraling down.
Those are a classic example of wind dispersal.
Right, so wind dispersal, small seeds' wings, and that spiraling flight pattern.
Yep. All about helping those seeds travel further.
So is it safe to assume then that all wind dispersed seeds are what the book calls orthodox,
Hmm.
meaning they can dry out and be stored easily?
That's actually a common misconception.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not always the case. For example, take dipterocarps.
Okay.
They're a whole family of trees
Uh-huh.
that mostly have what are called recalcitrant seeds.
Recalcitrant.
Yeah, it means they can't dry out. Otherwise, they die.
Oh, wow.
But they still rely on wind dispersal.
Huh. Interesting. So I bet timing is everything when you're trying to collect those windblown seeds.
Absolutely. You miss your window, and those seeds are gone. Scattered who knows where.
Okay, so wind dispersal is all about speed and efficiency. What about animal dispersal?
Well, animal dispersal, that's a whole different strategy.
Right. You need a bit more persuasion, I guess, to get those seeds to hitch a ride.
Yeah. You've got to think about those fleshy fruits.
Okay.
Often they're large and colorful. Reds and yellows are particularly
To
popular
attract the animal.
to attract the animals, exactly. And they'll often have these protective structures around the seed.
Right. The book mentions some fruits with some pretty wild names. Sandoricum, Paeina, Aglaya, Swintonia.
Those are some good ones.
They all rely on animals to spread their seeds.
Yep. And you know what's really fascinating is that these fruits often have built-in mechanisms to actually control germination. Yeah. They might contain chemicals that prevent that seed from sprouting before it's been dispersed.
Wow. So it's not just about attracting animals. It's about making sure that seed gets to the right place at the right time.
It's a delicate balance.
But that must make collection even trickier. You're not just dealing with the elements.
Right.
You're competing with the local wildlife.
It's true. You've got those long fruiting seasons, which means multiple trips to the forest.
Okay.
And then, of course, you've got all those hungry animals, birds, monkeys, all sorts of creatures who see those fruits as a tasty snack.
So it's not just about being a seed collector. It's about being a seed detective.
Uh-huh. I like that.
Trying to outsmart those fruit-loving creatures.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels that way.
Okay, well, on that note
Yeah.
of seed detectives and unconventional methods, I think that's a perfect place to,
A good cliffhanger.
a good cliffhanger to end this part. So we'll be back soon with part 2 to delve into those more, should we say, creative solutions for collecting seeds from those towering rainforest giants. All right, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right, so spill the beans. What are these unconventional methods for collecting seeds from these super tall trees?
Well, you won't believe some of these.
We're talking about competing with all those fruit-loving animals. Are we like training monkeys to do the collecting for us or something?
Right. If only it were that easy.
Hey.
It's usually much less glamorous than that.
Okay.
One method the textbook mentions is using a rifle.
A rifle?
What? Yeah, to actually shoot branches off the tree,
Oh, wow.
bringing the seeds down with them.
Okay. I got to admit, I never would have guessed that one. Effective, I guess? But I can only imagine there are some downsides to that approach.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
There's definitely the potential to damage the tree itself.
Right. And it's not exactly a precision instrument.
Not at all. You're kind of just hoping that the branch you hit has enough fruit on it to make it worthwhile.
So not the most elegant solution.
No, not really. But it does work in certain situations.
Okay, what other methods are out there?
Another one involves a crossbow, but instead of aiming for the fruit, you shoot a line up and over a branch.
Oh, interesting.
And then you can use that line to pull up a pruning saw,
I see.
allowing collectors to cut off those fruit-bearing branches from the ground.
Okay, that definitely sounds a little bit more controlled
Right.
and less likely to turn the tree into Swiss cheese.
Exactly.
But earlier you were talking about some even more out there ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Something about balloons and helicopters.
Yeah, those are definitely reserved for special cases, like when the seeds are really valuable or the trees are just impossible to climb.
Right.
Sometimes they actually use these large balloons.
Balloons.
Yeah, to lift platforms high enough to reach the canopy.
Wow. So you're like floating through the rainforest collecting seeds from the treetops?
It's pretty amazing to see.
That does sound pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I can see the appeal, but it also sounds incredibly risky and expensive.
Oh, it definitely is. And what about helicopters?
Yeah.
I mean, have they actually used helicopters for this? It has been done,
Really?
but it's very rare.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah. The costs and logistics are just astronomical.
Right.
And then there's the impact on the forest itself. You know, those powerful rotors can cause a lot of damage.
So it seems like those are kind of like the last resort options.
Yeah,
Only when absolutely necessary.
exactly. But even then, there are a lot of trade-offs to consider. It really highlights just how valuable those seeds are and the lengths that people will go to collect them.
Right. Because in the end, it's not just about gathering a bunch of seeds. It's about understanding that whole ecosystem and how those seeds fit into the bigger picture, especially when you're talking about conservation and restoration efforts.
Absolutely. Those seeds hold the genetic diversity that's essential for healthy ecosystems.
So with all these challenges and the importance of these seeds, how does that impact the way we approach conservation and restoration? How do we make sure we're collecting them in a way that's both effective and sustainable?
That's the million-dollar question, and it leads us to the heart of the issue. We need to think about how all these intricate seed dispersal mechanisms and the challenges we've talked about, how they directly impact the long-term health of these really vital ecosystems.
Okay, so we've got wind dispersal, we've got animal dispersal, we've got rifles, we've got balloons. We've got a lot to consider.
We do. It's a complex issue.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating one.
Yeah.
And I, for one, am really eager to keep exploring it. So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll untangle this web of connections and delve into the future of these incredible forests.
Sounds good.
So we've talked about all these incredible ways that seeds get around and the lengths that people go to collect them. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this all connects to conservation. It's like this giant puzzle trying to figure out how to manage these forests for the future.
It really is a complex puzzle.
Yeah.
And like any puzzle, understanding how all the pieces fit together is key.
Yeah.
Let's go back to wind dispersal for a second. Those lightweight seeds can travel incredible distances, which is great for spreading genetic diversity, far and wide.
Yeah, but it also makes things pretty tricky for the people trying to collect those seeds, right?
It does. You mentioned before how timing is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Miss that narrow window and poof, those seeds are gone with the wind.
Exactly.
Hey.
And that time crunch can mean that you're not able to collect from as many individual trees as you might want,
Right.
which could limit the genetic variation in your collection.
Exactly. And when you're talking about conservation, where preserving that wide range of genetic traits is so important, that can be a real problem.
It's like trying to bake a cake with only half the ingredients.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Limited genetic diversity makes those forests more vulnerable to disease, to climate change, to all sorts of threats.
Makes sense.
And it highlights the importance of really careful planning and understanding the species you're working with.
So wind dispersal definitely has its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
And then with animal dispersal, we're talking about a whole different ballgame, right?
Oh.
Those fruits are often big and juicy, and they're attracting a whole bunch of different seed dispersers.
It's a buffet out there for the local wildlife.
And for the seed collectors, it's like this race against nature to get to those fruits before the animals do.
Exactly.
So it's like we're playing keep away with the whole forest.
In a way, yeah. But this also brings up something you mentioned earlier about how animals can actually help to spread those seeds far and wide.
Preventing overcrowding and making sure there's good genetic mixing.
It's nature's way of making sure that the forest is constantly regenerating in a healthy way.
But for someone trying to collect seeds from a particular tree, that must make things incredibly difficult.
It does. You might have to track those animals all over the forest.
That's like detective work.
It is. It's all about observation and adaptation and respecting that delicate balance of the forest.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of tropical forest seeds, what's like the one big takeaway you want listeners to think about?
I think the biggest takeaway is the interconnectedness of it all. The way that these seeds get dispersed, the challenges of collecting them, the long-term health of the forest, it's all connected. It's this delicate dance between nature and human intervention. And understanding that dance is crucial for successful conservation and restoration efforts.
It's amazing to think about, next time I see a towering tree, I'm going to be thinking about the journey of that tiny seed and all the different players that helped it get there.
It really is a remarkable story.
It is. It's a story of survival and adaptation and the importance of preserving those connections for the future. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of tropical forest seeds.
It was my pleasure.